Far out in the deepest ocean, where the water is as blue as the petals of the loveliest cornflower and as clear as the purest crystal, there stood the palace of the Sea King. The Sea King was a widower, but his aged mother managed the household with care. She was a wise woman, proud of her noble birth, and she tended the upbringing of the king's 6 daughters. Each mermaid princess was born 1 year apart, the youngest being the most beautiful of all. Her skin was as clear and delicate as a rose petal, her eyes as blue as the deepest sea. Yet unlike her sisters, she had no finery of pearls and jewels. Instead, she wore only a wreath of fresh white lilies, for each petal seemed to reflect the gentle beauty of her soul. But it was not her beauty that set her apart. She was quiet and thoughtful, often sitting for hours in her garden of red flowers, listening to the world above. More than anything, she longed to rise to the surface and see the lands where humans lived.
You poor child. We live far better lives than those above. Humans are fleeting, fragile creatures.
They must die, while we may live for 300 years.
True, we turn to foam at the end, but what is that to mortals who wither so soon?
But they have souls that live forever. I would give all my years just to gaze on the wonders of mankind and win an immortal soul.
When a mermaid reached the age of 15, she was allowed to swim to the surface and see the world above. The eldest sister went first. When she returned, her eyes glowed with tales of moonlight on the sea, of ships with proud masts, and of music drifting over the waters. Each year, another sister rose, and each brought back her stories. Fields of flowers, flocks of birds, icebergs glittering like diamonds. The little mermaid listened with all her heart, though each tale deepened her longing. At last, her own 15th year arrived. On the evening of her birthday, she rose at twilight to the surface of the sea. The air was still and soft, the sky glowing with stars. Before her lay a grand ship with lanterns strung like constellations across its rigging. Music played, and laughter drifted across the water. Curious, she swam closer and peered through the cabin window. There, in the midst of celebration, stood a young prince. He was handsome, and the sailors treated him with reverence, for it was his birthday. The little mermaid gazed at him in wonder. He seemed to her the most radiant being she had ever seen. She remained, half hidden among the waves, listening to the music, until the night grew late and the stars wheeled overhead. Then a storm arose. The sea grew black, the winds howled, and lightning split the sky.
We are going to sink! Help! Help me! We're going down!
The ship shuddered, its mast snapped, and waves crashed upon its deck. With one great surge, the ship was torn apart. The little mermaid dived into the chaos, searching desperately for the prince. At last, she found him sinking, unconscious, beneath the waves. Wrapping her arms around him, she held his head above water and let the waves drift them freely. In the morning, the storm had ceased, but not a single part of the ship was in sight. The prince looked very handsome in the morning light, and as she looked at his peaceful face, A longing stirred in her heart. She kissed his smooth forehead and stroked back his wet hair. Looking out in the distance, she saw land, so she swam with all her strength until she brought him to the shore of a quiet temple. There she laid him upon the sand, gazing at him with a love that pierced her heart. Bells in the temple rang, and a maiden from the temple came walking among the gardens. The prince stirred, and when his eyes opened, it was upon the maiden that they first fell. The little mermaid slipped back into the sea, her heart breaking. From that day, she thought of nothing but the prince and the immortal soul she might gain through his love. She no longer played among the coral gardens of her father's palace, nor joined in the songs of her sisters. Her thoughts clung to the human world above. She would swim to the place where she had borne the unconscious prince to shore, gazing longingly toward the land, wondering where he lived, and if he remembered the face that had watched over him through the storm. At length she could bear it no longer, and told one of her sisters all that weighed on her heart. Soon the others knew as well, and two mermaids, friends to her sisters, heard the secret. One of these had an intimate companion who dwelt nearer the coast and often rose to the surface. This friend had seen the festival on the prince's ship the night of the storm, and she recognized the young man the little mermaid loved. She told them who he was and where his palace stood upon the shore. From that moment, the little mermaid swam often to the surface near the land where the prince lived. She would linger among the rocks and gaze at the castle, watching the prince walk in the gardens or ride out upon his horse. Though she never dared approach him, her heart was filled with a bittersweet joy each time she caught a glimpse of him. At last, unable to keep her questions any longer, she went to her grandmother.
Do humans truly live forever, even after their bodies die?
Yes, we merfolk live longer than they, but when we die, we are nothing but foam upon the waves. Humans, however, have a soul that rises to the stars and lasts for all eternity.
Oh, I would give all my 300 years for but one day as a human, if it meant gaining a soul.
Humans never speak of such folly. Now get ready, child. Tonight we shall hold a court ball.
It was to be one of those splendid sights the human world could never imagine. The great hall of the palace was prepared in dazzling beauty. Across the center of the hall flowed a broad, clear stream of seawater, wide enough for dancers to glide in pairs. Here, the mermen and mermaids twined and spun, their hair streaming behind them. The little mermaid was soon called forward to sing. She lifted her voice, and at once the music of the others fell away, for none could compare with the clarity and sweetness of her tones. It was a song of longing, though none but she knew its true meaning. The entire court applauded, clapping hands and swishing tails in admiration. And for a brief moment, her heart felt light. She knew with certainty that her voice was lovelier than any in the sea, or even on the earth above. Yet even in her triumph, her thoughts drifted away from the crystal hall. As the laughter and dancing filled the palace, she slipped quietly away. Alone in her little garden, she sank down among her sea flowers. Then, from above, a faint sound pierced the depths. A bugle horn ringing clear over the sea. Her heart leapt. He is sailing there, she thought.
I will venture everything for him, for his love, and for the immortal soul that only his love can give me.
Tonight, while my sisters dance in the palace, I will go to the Sea Witch, whom I have always feared. She alone has the power to help me.
With that, she rose from her garden, her decision fixed as firmly as stone. While music and joy resounded through the crystal halls behind her, the little mermaid swam away into the darkness. toward the dreadful whirlpools where the sea witch made her dwelling. So she swam to the farthest part of the sea, where the water grew black and twisted plants writhed like serpents. There, in a cave lit by glowing bones, dwelt the sea witch.
I know what you seek, child. You desire the love of a prince and the immortal soul that may follow. I can give you a potion. Drink it, and your tail will split into 2 human legs. You will walk as men do, though every step will feel as if knives were piercing your feet. Still, you will dance more gracefully than any mortal. But beware. Once you take a human form, you can never return to the sea. If the prince marries another, your heart will break, and you will dissolve into foam at dawn.
And your voice, child, your most precious gift, you must give to me.
But without my voice, how shall I tell him I love him?
You have your beauty, your grace, and your eyes that speak more than words.
Now, what say you?
I will do it.
The vessel for your voice.
So, the witch took her voice, sealing it in a shell, and handed her the potion. The little mermaid swam to the shore and drank. Pain like fire shot through her, and she fell senseless upon the sand. When she awoke, the sun was rising, and where her tail had been, 2 slender legs lay trembling. The prince himself came upon her and lifted her gently.
Who are you, maiden? How came you here upon the shore?
She could not answer, but gazed at him with eyes filled with devotion. He smiled, and though he wondered at her silence, he led her to the palace. There she lived among the courtiers, clad in fine gowns. She danced for the prince with such grace that all marveled, though each step felt like knives cutting her feet. Yet she bore it gladly, for each moment near him filled her with joy.
Oh, dear child.
The prince grew fond of her, and he told her of his dreams, his hopes, and his gratitude for the maiden who had once saved him, whom he believed to be the girl from the temple. The little mermaid's heart ached with longing, but she smiled and listened in silence. One day, the prince was commanded by his parents to journey and meet the princess of a neighboring kingdom.
I will obey, but my heart is free. I could never love another as I love the maiden from the temple.
When they reached the other kingdom, the princess came forth, and to the little mermaid's despair, it was indeed the maiden from the temple. The prince, overjoyed, believed his destiny fulfilled. The mermaid smiled bravely, though her heart broke within her.
My dearest, you will be glad for me, will you not? For she is the one who saved me, and I must honor heaven's gift.
The ships were decked with banners, for the wedding was to be held in the neighboring kingdom of the Temple Maiden. The prince had promised to return there within 7 days to take his bride. The little mermaid knew that when he gave his vows, her life would end, and she would dissolve into foam. Yet she smiled bravely and stood at his side as they sailed beneath a sky of silver stars. That night, as the vessel glided through the dark waters, her sisters rose from the waves. Their long hair, once their pride, had been cut away, and the sea foam clung to their pale cheeks like tears.
Before the sun rises, you must strike the prince's heart. Let his blood fall upon your feet, and the spell will break.
Into her hands they pressed a glittering dagger.
You will return to us in the sea, and your life will be spared.
With that, they sank back into the waves, their voices fading on the wind. The little mermaid stood alone upon the deck, gazing at the dagger in the moonlight. Her hands trembled, but her heart was steadfast.
No, I will not buy my life at the price of his. If death awaits me, I will greet it with love.
Slowly she raised the blade, then with a cry flung it far into the sea. Resolute, she turned and walked softly to the prince's chamber. He lay asleep. Kneeling beside him, she bent to kiss his forehead in farewell. At her touch he stirred, his eyes opened, and for a moment he gazed at her in confusion.
It was you who saved me from the sea, not the maiden of the temple.
Then, as though a veil were lifted, memory flooded him. He saw again the storm, the waves closing over him, and the pale face that bent over his own, drawing him back to life.
How could I have been so blind? Those eyes, I remember them from that night. Forgive me, dearest, I love you. Not out of gratitude, but because my soul has known you all along. You are my savior, my beloved. Will you be my bride?
The little mermaid's tears shone like pearls as she clasped his hands. The ship reached the temple maiden's kingdom at dawn. With honesty, the prince went before her and told her all that had passed. The dreams that had haunted him, the memory that had returned, and the truth of the one who had saved him.
The one who had set you free. It was her love that brought you back from death. Go to her. I release you freely.
So the ships turned and sailed homeward, bearing the prince and his true bride. When they reached the prince's kingdom, bells pealed from every tower. The city was dressed in garlands and banners. People rejoiced, for their beloved prince had found his heart's desire. The little mermaid walked at his side, clothed in white, her steps no longer pained, but light as air. With each vow she spoke, warmth blossomed in her chest, and she felt the immortal soul she had longed for awaken within her. The sea shimmered with joy, and her sisters rose from the waves to sing a song of gladness. No longer would she become foam. She had won what she desired most, love, and a soul that would last forever. And so, the little mermaid and her prince lived in joy and harmony, their love as boundless as the sea.